So I want to give you guys a quick product update on a bit of an issue that I had. So this is the Protang fire suppression tube. You guys might remember I did several videos on these. These essentially are tubes that you place in areas that you could have a risk of a fire. They get to a certain temperature and then they burst. So essentially they come in contact with the flame and it detonates the tube, which releases the FM200 gases from the inside of the tube in a fashion that smothers or starves the fire and puts it out. So this specific tube was the one that I had placed in the engine compartment of my truck. And what happened on a hot day, I think it was about 92 degrees outside, we had been driving the truck for about 30 minutes and the tube detonated, or it expelled the material inside of it. They call it activating. And it didn't activate because there was a fire, it activated simply because the engine temperatures in my truck exceeded the temperature that this would normally activate at, so of course it caused it to release its material. In the process of doing that, it actually caused a little bit of damage. My map sensor inside, right about an inch and a half from it, was broken off, and it pushed some insulation down under the back of the engine area, which I was able to fix. Map sensor was about $100. Insulation was really easy to fix as well, but you definitely want to be careful, because if it activates simply because of temperature, you do run the risk that it could activate if you open the hood, or if it's really hot, it could go off on its own. That's something to keep in mind. Now, that doesn't mean I don't believe the product's a good product. It just means you have to be careful, because it could activate under circumstances that aren't related to an actual engine fire taking place. So if it's under the hood of your vehicle, just be careful. When you pop the hood, if it's really hot one day, it could go off. So that's something you want to keep a close eye on. And I'm not too worried about that happening in areas that don't generate their own heat, such as a toolbox or other areas that normally isn't going to get so hot that it could cause the tube just to go off proactively on its own. Under the engine though, it gets pretty hot in there, and that combined space can possibly cause these to go off. And I know that they've had that happen one other time that they've told me about, so you definitely want to keep that in mind, especially if you live in the southern part of the US where it gets really hot outside. Just the ambient temperature outside of the engine is going to be near 100 degrees. So after it heats up, of course, the outside of your vehicle radiates to the inside of your vehicle, especially the engine compartment. You do run the risk that the tube could detonate. So just keep that in mind. Again, I don't think it's a bad product, but I can't necessarily recommend this for under the hood of a tow vehicle or a vehicle where spacing might be kind of tight. It was spaced about 2 inches off of the area that it was essentially protecting, which is the top of the intake manifold, and it was supposed to be fine there. They actually came and saw it. They wanted me to secure it in a few more areas just to keep it from moving around, which I did, but it still went off because of the heat. So here's something cool you probably haven't seen before. This is actually the sidewall of a Coachman RV. They sent it to me because I was talking about AZDEL and some of the advantages of it, and they figured that a cutaway would be a really good thing to show. So when you look at how this is constructed, you can actually see the AZDEL layer right here, which is bonded to the fiberglass surface. And if you compare that to the Luan, which is the interior panel, it's roughly twice as thick. It's also very rigid. So the Luan is essentially a thin plywood that's imported, and it's bonded to the fiberglass on 99.99% of travel trailers and fifth wheels and most RVs out there. So if water ever gets into this wood layer, it'll start rotting and it will delaminate this fiberglass outer skin from it. So with AZDEL, you can see how tight of a bond that is, and there's virtually no chance of water ever causing the outside fiberglass layer to become disconnected from that AZDEL. And then you can see the foam that's in between and the Luan on the inside. Now, a lot of people say, well, why don't they put AZDEL on both sides? And the real story here is that your biggest likelihood of any type of water intrusion is going to be on the outer side, getting in between the wall surface, generally from humidity or moisture or rain or whatever could cause water to kind of seep in between the fiberglass and the Luan wood on most RVs. So Coachman puts the AZDEL on the outer layer, and again, not really on the inner layer for that specific reason. They could, but it's not really needed, because at that point, if you've had water that's compromised the outside, then you kind of have more of an issue, and that's probably going to be related to more of a flooding issue or some type of a water intrusion from the inside out versus the outside in. So they also sent me this little sample of the AZDEL material by itself. So this is what it looks like. It's actually quite thick. So if you compare it to the Luan, you can see it's probably about 20% thicker. And it's a rigid material, so it definitely does not bend or flex or give. It feels like a plastic fiberglass mixture, which is essentially what it is. I believe they use fiberglass as well as recycled bottle caps to actually make this specific material. But it is essentially waterproof, so you don't have to worry about this ever being compromised or saturated with water like you would wood, because of course wood is starving for water and it absorbs moisture. So again, with this material connected to the fiberglass layer, you're not really ever going to have to worry about any type of delamination. If there were to be delamination, it would probably be during the manufacturing process of where the fiberglass didn't adhere properly because of an adhesive problem or something else like that. Now, they talk about the added benefits of using AZDEL, such as it's 50% lighter, so it weighs half as much as the wood material. There's no rot, mold, warpage, or delamination. It has 2 times the R value, which is also nice, a better insulator. It's odorless, formaldehyde-free, it's quieter. It does act as a bit of sound deadening or insulation. It does not impact rainforests. It's unaffected by humidity or temperature changes, has a long life, and it's made in the US. So a lot of perks to it. Coachman is not the only brand that uses AZDEL, but they're just about the only brand that utilizes it for just about all of their fiberglass walled RVs. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to show you all this. It's a pretty cool product. Again, that's what the material looks like. Feels kind of like a soft, fibrous material. Here's what the sidewall looks like. Again, the Luan versus the fiberglass bonded to the AZDEL. And has a very solid feel to it. Very cool. Finally have some time to go fishing.